Today's review is brought to you in collaboration with our friends over at thedjhookup.com. What's up, passionate DJs? You're looking at the Reloop Mixon 8 Pro. This controller offers access to streaming, stems, and four-way paddle effects, which is something I've never seen before. It also has a dual USB interface, and one of them is a USB-C, which will power your iPad or iOS device while using the DJ app. This is the Mixon 8 Pro. I'm David Michael, and this is Passionate DJ. The Mixon 8 Pro is a 4-channel DJ controller with a dual audio interface, which is compatible with both Serato and Algoriddim Djay. In fact, if you're already a DJ user, you've probably been waiting for a device like this for quite some time. This controller sets itself apart in a few different ways. For example, it has 4 effects paddles. Now, while paddle-style effects have become popular lately, working their way over from dedicated scratch mixers onto controllers and standalone DJ systems, this is the first time that I've actually seen 4 of them. But that's only part of the story. It also has proper software controls for the effects, like we used to see on controllers all the time. It's an interesting combination of old and new school effects control. The next thing you'll notice is the slot at the top of the controller, dedicated to holding your iPad up to 12.9 inches. If you use the DJ app for iOS, you're gonna love this. It carries on the torch of the Mixon 4, which was also a 4-channel controller that supported both DJ and Serato. One major difference here is standalone mixing, complete with DVS compatibility for timecode users, so feel free to hook up those turntables. Another is its dual USB interface, which now includes a USB-C option that's up to the task of charging your iOS device while you're using it to DJ. The Mixon 8 Pro includes support for stem separation and streaming integration with Tidal, SoundCloud, Beatport and BeatSource, and Apple Music. Now, it retails for $12.49, but if you're quick, you can get one for much cheaper due to a massive site-wide sale on thedjhookup.com. This one is currently discounted by a few $100s, and literally everything on the site is on sale right now. So check out this RMX95 for under $900, or this Reloop Elite scratch mixer for just over $1,000. Now, even though the DJ Hookup is holding this massive inventory clearance, you still get free shipping, 6 to 18-month financing options, and all the same warranty options that they always offer. So if you've been looking for new DJ gear, now's the time to check out thedjhookup.com to get in on some sweet, sweet deals. So as we look at the top of the Mixon 8 Pro here, you'll notice that it is a very handsome-looking controller. There are some familiar things here, but you will also notice a mirrored layout rather than a symmetrical one. So in other words, your play and cue buttons and all this stuff are at opposite ends. It's mirrored on each deck there, rather than having them on the right side of each deck. This is the way the controllers used to be. A lot of devices in recent years have kind of moved toward a more symmetrical layout so that it kind of matches DJ players. But if your preference is to have the old school mirrored layout, here it is. Another thing that's kind of a combination of old and new school is the fact that you do have these encoders and controls up here for your effects, kind of like you remember from old school controllers where you really get proper control over the software effects, but then you also have the paddles here. So if you wanted effects paddles, but you also like having those kind of full software controls, this is a device that actually gives you both. Everything, generally speaking, on top of the controller, as far as the knobs, the sliders, the inputs everywhere, including the paddles, all feel very nice. There's a lot of resistance to all these inputs. There's nothing too loosey-goosey, and I like the kind of pushback that it gives me. And I would place the quality of the paddles somewhere between Rain and Pioneer. I like these actually better than most Pioneer paddles that I've seen on, say, the S5 and S7 mixers, but they're not as good as the higher-end Rain mixers that are made out of those die-cast aluminum bits. But these are nice and sturdy, good spring action, good feedback on the pads, nice clicky play, pause, loop controls. Now, one thing about the loop controls that's really nice is that you have this little segmented LED display that shows you the loop size that's selected, and then you can halve or double the amount of your loop by tapping one of those buttons. So basically, auto loop to activate, and then half or double the size. This is a pretty decent way to handle loops. My preferred way is to use a rotary encoder, where you can push the encoder in and then it sets a loop and then you twist it left or right to set the size. But still, a lot of people like this way, and this will work out great. And I like that there's visual feedback for it right here on the unit itself. And speaking of visual feedback, there are really nice in-jog displays here that are, very simple segmented displays, but they show you all the important information that you need. So it's not going to show your album art and things like that, but it's going to show your BPM, it's going to show your pitch percentage, which deck is active, time remaining, all that kind of important stuff that might keep you from staring at your screen so often. We, of course, have your 3-band EQ here in the middle, and then a filter knob here above the paddles and below the EQ. And this is not any other single knob turn effects or anything like that. This is just straight up filter. And you can set the resonance of the filter. Even if you're using, say, Algoriddim Djay software, you can go in and change the resonance of it there if you like the squelchier sound versus the softer sound. I like that there's really long throw pitch faders on here for your manual beat matching purposes. Really nice to have these long throw deals on here. That was a complaint that I had of the Mixon 4, was that those were really short. Here in the middle of the mixer section, kind of up at the very top, you've got your LED VU meters. They are 5 segments long. I would like to see those to be a little bit bigger, but they work fine. Down by the low EQ knobs, you will have your Q buttons, and these are almost easy to miss. They're kind of small, and in the middle, of course, you have all your important master volume, your booth volume, the volume of your Q in your headphones, and your Q mix, and your sampler. At the very top, you've got a hardware switch for stereo Romano right there at the top. That's pretty cool to have on a controller like this, not something you usually see as a hardware switch. I also really like the nice chunky browse knob down here, and the way it sort of works is that you will do your browsing here, you'll click in to go to a level deeper within your crates, and then you can select which channel you want to load it into by tapping the button at the top of the channel. So it makes it really obvious which channel you're loading into as long as you tap that button right above the relevant deck. Another way you could do this, let's say if you're using DJ and an iPad, is to just use the touch screen. You can just go to whichever deck and just tap little album art there, and it will bring up the browse. You can select whichever track that you want to load, and then it automatically knows which deck you're talking about because it's the one you tapped on. So a couple of different options to treat this however you want as far as browsing, but it's really simple and intuitive, and I like that. Another thing you don't see all that often is this Q split. So if you are the kind of person that likes to do your split Q, especially if you use in-ear monitors, you want to break them out into the left and right sides, you can do that right here with a switch. That's not something that's often included on controllers. You have to go to, say, a hardware mixer to do that, or do some kind of software hack. But this is supported right on the Mixon 8 Pro. Crossfader is fine and functional. If you're like a scratch DJ, this is probably not the device that you're looking at anyways, but there is a crossfader contour adjustment on the front so that you can make that really nice sharp cut if you want to do some scratching. The jog wheels themselves, really nice. They're really smooth. They actually have a bit of resistance, so if I spin them, they don't spin for very long. So they're smooth, but they don't have that thing like CDJ 3000s or some high-end thing where you spin it and it'll just keep on spinning for a long time. Not that that's really needed, but that might be relevant to know if you are a scratch DJ. This isn't really kind of set up for that stuff, but it feels really nice, really smooth. They're quiet. Mic controls are nice and intuitive too. I like that they have them kind of here over on the left and over on the right. You've got a nice big on button and a nice big talk over button. Really easy to see if those are engaged if you're doing the mobile gig thing. The microphones will take up a channel here on the mixing board. So if you've got 2 mics and you're using them all the time, then you're sort of down 2 channels. So that's something to bear in mind, that if you're using mics, you've got to switch one of these sources to mic. And then, of course, there's this lovely slot top dead center up here for you to put your iPad in. I was able to put my old iPad in here. I think it's a 10.9 inch. We also put Mo Dingo's giant iPad Pro in here, the M1 model. They all fit in there nicely without any kind of case. Now, of course, this being a controller that supports DJ, it will work with any iOS mobile device, so my phone worked great with it, albeit with a very tiny screen, but my phone I couldn't get to wedge into the slot no matter how hard I tried. To me, it would make sense to have this sort of rubber piece in here to be removable, and that kind of solves that problem. You just take it out, then you've got a slightly bigger slot to put a phone or a thicker tablet with a case on it. In any case, it's still really nice to have this built into the unit, though, when it's compared to, say, like a Prime 4 or an all-in-one, something like that with a screen that's on it, usually you have some kind of tilt controls or something like that. You don't really have that on here. You're kind of stuck with the angle it gives you, but it is a good angle, and most iPads have nice, bright displays, and that's not really going to be an issue. So let's take a look at the back, and you'll be happy to know that we have XLR out to go to any professional rig that we need to, club or festival or any of that kind of stuff, but we also have our RCAs and our 1/4-inch balanced booth outputs. We've got all our RCA inputs here in the middle, and of course we've got 2 phono inputs here. So channels 1 and 2 are your options for phono, and then you've got your ground peg in the middle, and you've just got little hardware switches here to choose phono. And if you are a DJ who needs to hook up 4 turntables, but you specialize in Algoriddim Djay, who are you? What's your story? Are you Laidback Luke's dad? I have to know. I think 2 is probably fine. We also have 2 USB inputs. Well, technically we have 3 here because one of them is selectable between your traditional USB port and the newer USB-C standard. That can actually charge the device while you're playing from it, where you used to have kind of a funky adapter thing to be able to do that. Nowadays with USB-C, you're able to just power it straight from the controller itself. If you have a newer iOS device, then you can connect just a regular standard USB-C cable. If you have an older iOS device that has a Lightning port, you will either need to get a specialized cable for this that goes from Lightning to USB-C. This is actually more common than you think. I actually literally bought mine from a gas station less than a mile from my house. But if you don't have that, you could also use one of these adapter things that converts them, and you're good to go. Your input for mic 1 is back here as well. It's a combination 1/4-inch XLR input. And it's also worth noting that this controller does have a separate power brick. It looks like this. Very small and easy to tuck out of the way. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the effects. So once again, up here at the top, above each jog wheel, you have effects control, kind of like you have on traditional DJ controllers, and then you combine that with the more modern paddle effects here, and in combination you can do some pretty cool stuff. So basically, typically the top knob here will work as a parameter or wet or dry knob. We're using Serato right now, and below each knob you've got an arm button for each one of these effects. So you can arm the effect, but once again nothing's going to happen because we haven't flipped the paddle yet. So we'll go ahead and flip the paddle on, and we've got a flanger going here, and we're just going to turn that up a little bit so you can hear it. And then of course we could arm the rest of our effects just like that and adjust them individually. And if we'd set up an effects chain that we like and saved it, then we could just enable that and then enable them or disable them all at once with a flip of the paddle. Now obviously that sounds a bit messy, but I'm kind of exaggerating everything here just so you can kind of see how it works. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about stems. Now, I'm using Serato right now, and you'll notice that it's not really labeled for Serato stems here, but you can still access them because Serato has this function right here in the preferences that lets you replace any pad mode with stems. And so basically that's how you're going to want to do that if you're a Serato user using the Mixon 8 Pro. So you go in here, change this setting. I'm going to change mine from sampler because I don't really care about the sampler. And now I've got my hot cues here, but I'm going to change over to my sampler, which is actually my stems. And now we can do our normal Serato stem stuff. So we have our 4 stems separated out there, and then the bottom pads will do our stem effects like this.
One thing, real legend. You could doubt us, that's fine, but no one thing, real legend don't die. And we ain't gonna leave till we win. It's 10 out of 10. Y'all, they can't believe what they see, and they telling a friend. Yo, go pay the rent. This is all how we beat them all down. Energized by the crowd, they're saying it now.
So you have all the access that you would normally have on any Serato stems controller right here on the pads. Now, if we're using Algoriddim Djay software, the way that you access stems on the pads is very similar. You actually double tap that sampler button. So nothing there is actually labeled stems or neural mix or anything like that, but if you double tap this, it will put you into this pad mode here, and then you can do your individual stem stuff. Now in this case, the bottom row solos and the top row mutes. Now, you'll notice the difference here is that you only get 3 separate tracks here, 3 separate stems, rather than 4 as compared to Serato and other systems. But the Mixon has another trick up its sleeve. This isn't really marked anywhere, but if you hit Shift and tap like this, it actually puts the EQ in neural mix mode, and now these different EQs are actually mixing the stems. And the Mixon has one more stems-related trick up its sleeve, and that's the neural mix effect. So if you look up here, you'll see that there are little pictures of instruments and stuff. So if you hold the Shift button, you can select whether the effects are going to apply to just the drums, just the harmonics, or just the vocals. So I'm going to hold Shift and hold the vocals. And when I turn on this Bit Crusher effect, it will only affect the vocals instead of the whole track. As opposed to affecting the whole track, which would sound like this.
The thing I'm always wanting to do is this right here is I want to take my iPad, I want to connect it to a mixer or a controller, and I want to just go. Now I have my laptop as a backup, small form factor, big screen, but it's also charging, which is great. This is 1 cord away from being a standalone because now you have your iPad.
Now, caveat, how much storage does your iPad have?
1 terabyte.
Oh, so you're fine.
Yeah, I'm fine. But like if you have an older iPad, like I think the smallest one is like 32 or 64.
This one's a 32 gig, and this worked. Mm-hmm. And I'll show some footage now of me getting this to crash. It's basically by putting it into 4 decks mode, messing with a bunch of controls, and then trying to do stems. It was too much for this very old iPad. This is like a 2012 model. It did give it a really good try.
Okay.
The nice thing about the DJ app is it is scalable a little bit. You can turn the stems quality down, and it will help with stuff like that.
With processing
And obviously, I'm not going to be doing 4 decks with loops, with effects normally. So, if I were just doing a normal gig, this honestly probably would work. That being said, 32 gigs of space is literally nothing. I would either have to finagle a way to get more storage on this by adding a dongle and putting a USB drive on here, or this would be more of like a streaming only situation, which is a little scary to me. I wouldn't want a streaming only situation.
Yeah, because that eliminates a plan B.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now that said, the cheapest brand new iPad you can buy right now is like $300 or $400. It would be plenty fast enough to do all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then it's more like, okay, how do I get more storage? It's more of a storage situation.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of caveat there that if you're going from a device where you have 4 terabytes of music, Well, going to the iPad's probably not how you want to do that, unless you have a massive cloud, Dropbox situation.
Well, either that or, I mean, I'm assuming you could connect a dongle to this and hook a hard drive up to it.
Yeah, there's no reason that shouldn't work.
Yeah.
I was looking into some options where, they even have the little docking stations that will hug up against the side of the iPad, and then it'll let you pass through power. It'll let you connect thumb drives and HDMI ports and whatever you want to it, which would solve this problem. It would be just like a standalone that you could stick a USB drive into, but again, you're adding another little warp to the thing here, where it's one step back from standalone, right? So that it's not a perfect solution, but it is appealing.
But it's an option. And it's not like I'm all like, my whole thing is to just use an iPad solely. I'm just looking at it from a footprint standpoint. I always bring this with me anyway, and my cell phone, because they both have backup antennas just in case one is working as well as the other to get the Wi-Fi signal, because I never rely on facility Wi-Fi. It's just one less thing to fail, one less thing to worry about. Yeah, a laptop can fail. Yeah, an iPad can fail, but my MacBook does not have an antenna in it.
Right.
Where this does.
So I have my small list of complaints here, and I want to see if you agree with them.
Bring on the list of grievances.
Yes, so here are my grievances. So the first is that, and you mentioned this almost first thing when you stepped in front of it, is that the Q buttons are very tiny and in a location that is almost not obvious, and they're kind of like in the way. I really wish that there seems like there's plenty of room, like right here,
for sure,
for there to be some traditional
because Pioneer tends to place theirs right above the up faders.
Yeah, there are a number of options here. I don't know why they made them so tiny. You'd get used to that, whatever. The other thing is, I wonder why these VU meters are so short. There's plenty of room for a couple extra digits.
Yeah, there's lots of real estate, yeah.
So I would think you'd get a little more precision, add 2 or 3 more bars in there to each one. But okay, still works fine, still tells you when it's clipping, fine. I really wish there was more of an indication when you're on deck 3 or 4 versus deck 1 or 2.
Just the color.
It literally changes this button color to blue, and that's basically it. So there's no like LED jog ring that changes green or orange or some other color to tell you. And maybe that's like a personal complaint.
No, the 1000s do that too, where like it'll say one and like the location of what deck is active.
Okay,
it'll change from one side
like
of this to the other. Yeah,
and that threw me off several times when I was doing 4-deck mixing, where I was just changing the parameters of the wrong deck. If there was some other way to, even if like maybe just the colors on the onboard screen changed color, some other way that made it, I wonder if even there's a firmware update way to do this. If you're actively mixing 4 decks, you're busy. You need to be able to very easily not have to think about what you're controlling, just do it, right?
To go on with your list of complaints, I don't really like how you lose a channel if you're using a microphone. But again, maybe that's why it's only $1,100. 2
sides of that coin, right? You do gain the ability to have a 3-band EQ and to filter and to affect your microphone, as well as set it in the mix exactly where you want it. But you got to lose a channel.
For sure. Yeah.
And if you're with another DJ and you're each using 2 channels in your own software, then what do? That's where it really comes into play.
But for me, I always use a mixer. So I'm going to plug my microphones into my mixer, so that's not an issue. But there are some people, I'm sure, that just want to run everything through a controller.
The only other thing, and I think you ran into this too in your testing, is there seems to be a weird bug or something when the wet-dry encoders for the effects are at full wet, meaning they're at 100%. There's a weird thing that happens when you disarm the effect. In other words, when you turn it off, where it resets the dry-wet setting to 0, meaning the effect is all the way off.
Which was very confusing.
This was very confusing because you're like, why is that turning off? It says it's fully on. And it just wouldn't. And then if you go and wiggle the knob again, then the software goes, it's actually at 99%. So my solution for that was to leave it at about 99%, and then everything worked exactly the way.
But what DJ wants to go at 99%?
Yes, right. We need 110%.
Yes.
Future David here, and I ran a firmware update on here, and it indeed fixed my problems with the effects, so no problem. Make sure you update your firmware as soon as you get this. Again, I really like this conceptually as a separatable standalone all-in-one. Take this off and you have a tablet computer. That's pretty cool.
there are things that take some getting used to where your muscle memory may be failing you. The mirrored layout might not be used to that. The combination of effects controls with paddles takes a little bit of getting used to if you're just used to the effects working when you,
soon as you
instant
activate
on. There's little muscle memory things like that. And on top of that, the labeling of, like, let's say the pad stuff down here follows Serato standards, not DJ standards. So when you look at it and you're using DJ, which is probably what you want to do if you bought this, to access stems, you basically double tap this sampler button, but there's nothing there to indicate.
Tells you that. Okay.
Now you've got access to mute and solo, your 3 different stems, but it doesn't say what they are on here. It doesn't. This is vocals. This is bass. So you just kind of have to know, right? Whereas up here, you do have pictures of drums and instruments and vocals. And when I first jumped on here, I thought, oh, that's how you control the stems. And not so.
And until you told me, until you said that was the effects thing, I was looking at those. I was like, oh, maybe these are secondary switches for the stems.
So
but it's actually to activate.
It's to activate neural mix effects. This is when you are applying effects to a particular stem. So when you look at it, none of that is intuitively obvious. You just have to know. So I would not want to throw this in front of somebody and say, have at it, and walk away and have them do a DJ.
Especially if they're a stems type DJ.
There is a learning curve here for as many standards as it holds to, there's still some hurdles and quirks to get over. For me, it would be a switch of platform. I would be going entirely over to DJ.
Fair. Yeah.
So it's got to be perfect. I've got to have a real good reason to do that, and everything's got to match, and the device has got to be perfect. Whereas, a lot of people don't really care about the kind of stuff I'm complaining about. They've been using Tractor since 2008, remapping MIDI controllers and blah, 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 and none of the stuff that, matches what it actually says on the controller. And for that person, have at it. It's not going to matter.
For sure.
But for me, if I wanted friends to jump on this, I don't want to have to teach them how to use it every time.
And the same thing for me, like, I would buy this to do all the corporate stuff. But, like, when we did that fashion show, everybody was record box DJs. So if I brought this, there'd be a definitive learning curve where I can just grab the 1000. Hey guys, it's Nexus with no brain.
I hate to say it, but this would be an entirely different conversation if this was a hybrid record box DJ controller.
For sure. Because, record box and Pioneer, like, they just make things the same way over and over. Just the box is different, the brains are different. So for them to label the things the way they did, I think is a little interesting as well.
What Serato DJ is going to buy this over the competition, let's say Rain 4, which is a few $100s more expensive, admittedly, but is Serato AF. I mean, it's like everything is correct.
Yeah, tell me your Serato without telling me your Serato.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a very specific device for that purpose.
For sure.
This is probably the best Algoriddim Djay controller ever made.
I would agree.
They should just lean into that.
Yes.
Say Serato is a bonus.
But this is it's a great controller, especially if you use DJ.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the competition. Now, as mentioned before, the Mixon 8 Pro is the best Algoriddim Djay controller, and therefore probably the best iPad-compatible controller ever made. And for straight-up Serato users, a Rain 4 is a more ideal choice. This is especially true if that DJ is interested in stems, as it has the easiest and most comprehensive control in that department. It also has built-in hardware effects, and it's got better jog wheels, better displays, better faders, and just better build quality. Now for rekordbox and/or Serato users, there's the Pioneer DDJ Flex 10. This is another great choice that has overall better features and better build quality than the Mixon 8 Pro, including way better jogs and displays, effects and faders, and it even has the ability to control a lighting rig. Now, Algoriddim has released a mapping for the Flex 10, but I've not tried this combo myself, so I can't report back on how well that performs. Now, yes, the Mixon 8 Pro costs less than both of these options, which is kind of the point. That's what Reloop always does. They offer a great bang-for-buck alternative to the mainstream choices. And for those of you who aren't really comparing it to other controllers, but you're more thinking of the Mixon and iPad combo as a sort of makeshift standalone device, then this would sit somewhere between a Denon SC Live 4 and a Prime 4 Plus. So like the Prime 4, it supports mixing of external sources, you'd have full control over your effects chain, and you would have a big beautiful display. But you would have much simpler effects and jogwheel displays, which is much more like the SC Live 4. But of course, these standalones are ready to go, right out of the box. They can access streaming services, USB drives, or any storage options that you want without having to worry about your iPad spec. The cheapest Pioneer standalone that does true 4-channel mixing is in the $3,000 range, so yeah, I won't even bring that into this discussion. Overall, if you're all in on Algoriddim Djay software, this is the best choice, bar none. If you're a Serato DJ, you might pass on this one simply because there are better options. But the Mixon 8 Pro certainly moves the needle for me when it comes to the legitimacy of iPad DJing. So that's the Mixon 8 Pro by Reloop. I hope that you enjoyed this review, and if you're interested in getting this one, hopefully at a discount, and if you see this soon enough, go down to the description below and click the link to the DJ hookup. I'm David Michael, and as always, keep on spinning.